Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today we are back to work over here on the steam Stoker engine, and today my end goal is I really want to try to get set up to pour the babbitt that goes down on the crosshead slides. But to do that, I've got to get everything set up where those crossheads are running parallel and in time and everything else with the cylinders. So to do that, we're going to have to get the cylinders put on here and come up with a way to kind of fixture those crossheads in the proper position for pouring the babbitt bearings. And I've got some ideas on how to do it, but a lot of this is just going to kind of evolve as we go. So right now, the first step I want to do is I've got this Stoker engine. A long time ago, I built this little frame for it. I've got it sitting on a plate right now. I want to get it off of that plate and just bolt it down directly to this frame that I've got. Right now it's just sitting on it. I really want it bolted to it where it can be more stable. And then I want to come in here and we're going to affix temporarily. It's going to have to come back off, but go ahead and affix the cylinder head on this so that we can kind of proceed forward. So that's kind of my game plan today. Let's get in here and get it done. I mounted this whole engine over here on this thick plate to help with getting it set up on a machine to when I was machining these in here. The idea was I could clamp this down to a table. It was going to be difficult to clamp it otherwise. So this is just, I don't know, 1/2 inch thick, something like that, 5/8, 3/4. I can't remember what that plate is. And I just drilled and tapped a couple of holes in here to bolt it down. I'm going to pull these bolts out, and then we'll use the gantry to pick this up and we'll get it bolted back down to the frame. All right, I've been around and we got this actually bolted down with some bolts to the stand. So this is firmly attached to the stand. It's not going anywhere, although the stand's got a little rock to it. We'll have to shim up one edge, no big deal. We can go ahead and remove our straps. And now I need to go get the cylinder head and get it in here and see about getting it mounted in there as well. I've got the cylinder head that we're going to be mounting over here up on my workbench, and before we put it in there, I want to take the time. There's basically the way we're going to attach this is there's a bunch of studs that will screw into these. These happen to be 3/4 inch tin studs, but there'll be a series of these that go around, and they will basically just bolt it up to the main casting over there. But before I put these in, I'm going to take just a minute and I'm going to go around. I'm going to chase all of these threads with a tap just to make sure we got good clean threads. I got an opportunity to do it. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but it won't hurt to clean them all out good and make sure that we got what we need. So I'm just going to go around. We'll hit all these real quick, and I'll know that I got good, clean threads. So give me a minute to do this, and we'll come put our studs in. All right, I've got all these holes been chased with a tap. Should be nice and clean. The next thing I want to do is there's 4 holes right here. This is where a 5/8 inch dowel will align up over on the main case, and that's strictly for alignment just to get this in there. I'm going to take a 5/8 inch reamer and put up in these. I'm really not trying to cut metal. I'm just trying to make sure we got those holes cleaned out, and that is kind of a loose fit, but I just want to make sure that don't have any trash or anything up in those. I'm going to just hit all 4 of those real quick. And I am seeing some trash come out. All right, you can see the gunk that it cleaned out in there. There's also 2 big holes here that are tapped for a stuffing box to go into. This is basically a packing gland where the valve rod will go back and forth. Now, these are unusual. When I saw them, they're 2 inches in diameter. I said, well, that's just pipe thread. But number one, it's straight. It's not tapered. Pipe taps are tapered. These are straight. And then I got out my measuring tool to measure the threads, and a pipe tap or a pipe thread is 11.5 threads per inch. This is clearly 12 threads per inch, so it's not a pipe tap and it's a straight tap. I have a pipe tap, but this is not the right thread pitch and it's tapered. So I'm gonna have to find a 2-inch 12 tap. I'll find one, order one, I guess, to get these threaded out. And there is a little bit of a ding, and these do need to be chased before I put them back in there. But fortunately, I don't have to have those right now. I got time for that, so I'll be trying to source one of those coming up here pretty soon. This side is pretty much, at least for now, ready to go onto the machine. I think before I do it, I'm going to go ahead and spin it around and chase all the threads I can on the other side, just because I'm set up and doing it. But I think we're ready to go. Now, when we put it on for real, there will be a copper gasket that goes in here. I haven't got those copper gaskets made yet, and this is going to have to come back off anyway, so I'm not worried about that. I just want to get it in place so that we can use the cylinders to actually fixture that the crosshead so that they are parallel and on center with these parts here. So I'm going to flip this around. I'll chase those other threads, and we'll get ready to put this thing on. I got it flipped around, and I got all the threads chased out on these. These were 3/4 10. The ones around the valves are 1/2 inch 13. This is where the valves actually go in. There's a sleeve that's going to have to be made and pressed up in here. It has ports in it, and the valve slides back and forth in this little cylinder, and that's what lets the steam into the actual pistons, or into the cylinders down here for the pistons to move back and forth. While I got it, and I had that big tap out, that one fits these top pieces. I'm going to go ahead and chase these as well. The one on this side was pretty kind of beat up looking. The one on the other side looked pretty good. If I remember right, one side of these is where the steam is piped into this, and I think that was on this side on the locomotive this was originally installed on. So it was kind of boogered up a little bit where it had been, pipes had been in there, in and out over the years. If I remember right, this side just had a cap on it, a plug. So I pulled it out when we took it apart, but hadn't really been used much. So those threads are in pretty good shape over there. But we'll just chase these real quick with this big 2-inch pipe tap. I'm just going to tighten it up until it basically starts to get a little tight in there. These are pipe taps, so they're tapered. So as they go in, they're going to get tighter and tighter. And we'll just put them in and stop here in a minute. That's actually getting pretty tight right there. So I think we'll just stop and pull that one out, but that feels a lot better than it did. It was pretty cross-threaded in a couple places, so that's going to be a lot better. I'm going to do the same thing the other side just for good measure, but that's looking good. All right, with all of my tapped holes chased, I'm just going to go across the front of this with a precision ground flat stone, just to make sure I don't have any burrs anywhere. And I'm feeling a few, but nothing of any great significance. All right, kind of see the area where the copper gasket was at on these. So now, I think what I'm going to do is start putting some studs in. I am going to put a little bit of anti-seize on these studs so that if they ever need to come out, hopefully they won't give the next person as much trouble as they gave me. And I need to kind of figure out how far out they need to stick. So I need at least 1 3/4 inches, and that's about what I got right there. I'm just going to put these in, and I'll probably just tighten them up with a stud tightening tool before we put them all in there. I'm just going to put them in by hand right now. So let me get all these put in. I think we got all our studs on here, and we're ready to go ahead and kind of get this thing mounted up over onto the main body. Now, right now it is upside down. This is the bottom. It sits better this way, which is why I've got it sitting this way, but we're going to have to get it flipped over and picked up with the gantry and set over there, and we'll get these nuts tightened up and bolt this head in place. Go ahead and get a strap kind of around this thing. All right, now I'll pick it back up. And we'll get the gantry over it and lift her up. Gantry hooked up here, and see if we can lift this up. That's pretty well balanced. We can deal with that, I think. So let's see if we can get her manipulated over here where she needs to be. Bring it into place. Get my studs lined up like such. I'm just going to start taking nuts here and getting these bolted up on here. Now, when this is done for real, we'll have the copper gasket in between them, and we'll have to torque these in place and get them tightened up, you know, in an order. Make sure we're getting good even pressure on everything. But for right now, I just need to get them tight enough to hold the piston rod in the center so that we can get it properly aligned. All right, that is all tight. As I'm kind of working on this, I'm finding things that I'm remembering that's got to be done still. And one of the things is there's a pipe fitting that's broken off right down here in this bottom piece. Probably going to have to get the torch out and get that thing good and hot, and it hopefully will come right on out after we do that. I hope. Yeah, anyway, I just noticed that. This piece has been pretty much turned over upside down. I've kind of forgotten about that, but this head does have to come back off when we get the, we're going to have to heat it up also when we put the new sleeves in here for the valves, so that'll probably be when we tackle that. I'm also going to point this out right here, because if I don't, I'm going to get a million comments from people saying, hey, didn't you notice that your casting is cracked? Well, that's not a crack. Yes, it looks like one in the video. I know it does, but it's clearly not a crack. What that is when the pattern or when the mold was made in the sand, probably they had a little crack in the sand when they pulled the pattern out. It just kind of had a little crack in there. And that crack that was in the sand mold showed up in the casting. But that is actually kind of up above. It's kind of above it. You can take a grinder and grind it off and it'd totally go away. But yes, it does look like a crack because it's the opposite of a crack. It's actually the positive of a crack that was in the sand mold. No problem whatsoever. It's just there. But like I said, I know someone's going to comment on it, so I just figured I'd go ahead and address it. So I'm kind of to the point now where we can kind of start looking at why I'm doing this and what we're trying to accomplish. So these are the crossheads. These are what's going to slide in these channels that we previously machined. And I've talked about this before, but the bottom parts of these crossheads, this area down here, is all Babbitt. This is a soft tin alloy that has been poured on there, cast onto the bottom of this, and it's basically just kind of runs in this guide back and forth. This whole bottom of this thing is going to be filled in oil, so this thing's going to be constantly lubricated as it's going back and forth. The purpose of the crosshead is back here in the back. We have the crankshaft. There's a piston rod or a crankshaft rod or whatever that goes to this. And of course, as the crankshaft turns, that rod is rocking up and down, and it's also pushing the crosshead in and out. And then from here, we have the piston rod, the actual piston rod that's going to have the piston on it that will go up through the casting into the cylinder. The piston will be in here, and it'll be going back and forth. The purpose of the crosshead is it takes that up and down motion that is in the rocking motion of the piston back here, or whatever it's called. I guess it's really not a piston rod because the piston rod's up here, but that is rocking back and forth. But because of this being a steam engine, we need to go through packing lands. It all needs to be parallel. So this basically converts the rocking motion to a linear motion. So you got an intermediate piece in between here. There's your piston rod will come up through here. There's a tapered pin that locks it in place. And then you have a pin that's going to go through the whole casting here that will let you connect the connecting rod. I guess that's what it's called. It's the connecting rod to the piston, or to the crosshead to the piston. So because we had to machine these, we're going to have to re-pour the bottoms. As you can see, there's a lot of slop in there. That needs to be a nice tight fit. So we're going to melt that Babbitt out. We're going to have to re-pour it, but it's going to be very important that this crosshead be set up on the center of and parallel to the bore of the cylinders. And to do that, I think what we're going to do is we're going to actually use the piston rod itself to come in here, and I'm going to have to I'm probably going to need 2 discs inside of on the piston rod that will kind of act like a piston that will be the same diameter, or real close to the same diameter of the bore of these cylinders. And that will kind of hold that piston rod in place. It's going to kind of cantilever out, and then that will, and then hold this up while we pour it to get everything lined up. That's my thinking anyway. So I have new piston rods made. These were actually made by a viewer. These were made by David Eberhardt at Dragonfly Engineering. He did these quite some time ago on a CNC lathe that he has. Very nicely done. We've got a taper down here that fits up inside of the taper in the crossheads. And again, there's a pin that will drive down into this that will lock that into place. I've got to decide, do I want to use the actual piston rods to hold this in place, or do I want to make a separate rod just for this setup? And I'm honestly leaning towards making a separate rod, just mainly because I don't want to scratch this thing up. This thing is beautifully polished out, and I don't want to get it scratched up in anything in the process. And also, I think this rod needs to be a little bit longer than the piston rod, because basically we're going to have 2 discs up in here that will kind of be indexing this in place, so that it's going to be kind of held. We'll put one at the front of the bore, one at the back of the bore. So I'm probably going to have to make a setup piston rod basically to do this. That's kind of what I'm thinking as I'm sitting here putting this together. So yeah, I need to figure out what size material this is. I also need to figure out on the disc in here what I need. I'm probably going to have to get some material ordered to do that, but hopefully you kind of see what I'm going after here. So I thought I'd just kind of show you what I got in mind here for this little setup fixture. So I'm going to make a new shaft to kind of emulate my piston rod. It needs to be a little bit longer than the actual piston rod, so we're going to make a new one. I will have to cut a taper on this end, and this is where the crosshead piece will kind of fit on and kind of hang from this right here so we can pour the babbitt around it and it won't be dragging in the bottom. And this is kind of what it'll look like. There's going to be 2 discs on here that'll be bored to or turned to match the bore in the cylinders, and I need to get a real exact measurement on that. I want these to really just fit up in there. They'll probably be just a thousandth or 2 undersized, so they'll just barely fit up in there. The shaft will go through here. There'll be 2 of these, so one will be kind of holding these in opposition to one another, so it should keep that shaft straight and allow that part to hang from the end there where we can get it poured. And when it is poured, the babbitt poured around there, it should all be in a proper alignment, which is kind of what we're going for. I'm going to do these discs out of aluminum. And the reason I'm doing aluminum is this is a little bit softer material, should reduce the risk of any kind of scratching or anything inside that cast iron cylinder. And of course the shaft will be steel for maximum strength. And anyway, that's kind of what I got planned. That's kind of what we're looking at doing. And I've got the aluminum disc ordered right now. Those should be in the next couple of days. I got a piece of metal we can use for the shaft, so I think we'll be fine there. And of course, Ginger's up here checking out my beautiful artwork. Can't see him, but he's here. Well, you see a shadow. Yeah, that's Ginger's butt. All right, move, cat. All right, that's what we're after. Well, once again, I think I've kind of come to a stopping point here. I've gone about as far as I can go today, other than just I'm going to have to figure out my exact measurements on everything. I'll do that off camera and just kind of get some sketches done and figure out what I need, order material, and again, move forward on this project. So we are making good progress. Glad to see these cylinders back on here. Things are starting to come together. It's going to be, again, a little bit of a slow process. We got a lot of little things to do to get this thing back together, but one step at a time, like they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. We're going to get this elephant eaten sooner or later, and we're just going to do it one little bite at a time. Guys, with that is a wrap. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Those thumbs up and comments are always greatly appreciated. They help out a lot with the algorithms on YouTube. Helps get my channel and my content out in front of other people so that we can grow the channel. Also, big, huge thank you to those who support the site financially through Patreon, PayPal, etc. It enables me to be able to do things like buy all the hardware that I had to do. I spent over $500 just buying studs and bolts and little odds and ends that we needed to replace on this engine. And anything like that really does help out. Also, just recently started where you can do YouTube memberships. That's another way you can support my site. That's something new. There is a button down there to do memberships. And again, that's just putting a little bit of extra in there above and beyond what we get through our advertising, which is virtually nothing. So, a typical month's time, if you watch every video I put out, I'm going to be earning close to 1 penny from what you're watching, or from you. So if you get value out of my channel, consider contributing to one of those other sources. You can do it through PayPal. There's links down in the description. You can do it through Patreon. Again, links down in the description, or now through YouTube subscription. It's voluntary. There are some perks that come along with it, with all of those, so you can check those out if you want to. It really does help out, and I appreciate those guys that do it. Guys, with that, we're going to get out of here. We'll catch you guys in the next video. Again, as always, thanks for watching.